This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From the New York Times, Trudeau declares rare public emergency to quell protests. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau declared a national public order emergency on Monday as part of a larger effort to end trucker-led anti-vaccine and anti-pandemic regulation protests that have substantially hindered operations in the nation's capital and which have spread to several other cities throughout Canada and around the world. The invocation of the Emergencies Act is rare, and it basically gives the government heightened powers for a time, including the ability to ban public assembly, restrict travel, and seize vehicles that, quote, go beyond lawful protest, end quote. These protests, which include the use of giant trucks and trailers to blockade cities, streets, and bridges, have done significant damage to Canada's economy, which is part of the justification for using this act to clear them out. But it has also sparked pushback from some people who worry it represents government overreach and could result in human rights violations. That said, several national security experts praised the decision. On the same day, Mounties announced they discovered a large cache of weapons and body armor at one of the blockades, and many locals in protest cities have voiced their support for action, if anything, criticizing that something like this wasn't done sooner. From the Associated Press, Trump financial statements aren't reliable, says Trump's accounting firm. The accounting firm that prepared former President Trump's financial documents has said these documents, quote, should no longer be relied upon, end quote, in a letter to the Trump Organization's lawyer. The letter also said the accounting firm, Mazars, could no longer work with Trump, just weeks after the New York Attorney General announced that her ongoing investigation into Trump and his company found, quote, fraudulent or misleading, end quote, valuations of their assets, basically overstating their holdings in order to get more assets from investors and banks. This is an ongoing investigation that's likely to continue for years, but for the moment, the main takeaway from this story is that while the investigation may be accumulating some tangible evidence of wrongdoing, right now, it just means Trump and his company will need to find a new accounting firm. And from Reuters, Hong Kong overwhelmed as COVID infections hit record. Daily COVID-19 cases in Hong Kong have increased by about 20 times over the past 2 weeks, which has strained local hospitals and prompted the closing of schools until early March. There are just a few places in the world right now that are suffering from major COVID waves, and Hong Kong is one of them. Their infection numbers are doubling day to day, and that's with existing tight restrictions on social gatherings and other behaviors already in place. Worth noting is that Hong Kong has only had something like 24,000 infections total since the beginning of the pandemic, and a little more than 200 deaths due to a COVID-0 approach, similar to what's being done in mainland China. So while the thousands of infections and predicted tens of thousands of infections they expect to see by the end of March are significant for them, they're still relatively moderate numbers by international standards. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts, at understandery.com.